what's beautiful about biomagnetism is that it goes to the source. By focusing on the main cause instead of the symptoms, you no longer have to focus on, oh, what can I take to lower the volume on this headache? What can I take to numb the pain? What can I take to relax the muscles? It more or less becomes, what is causing the pain in my muscles? Is it some underlying infection? Is it some underlying stress, emotional stress, that's then throwing off my immune system, that's putting my body into chaos? And so with biomagnetism, you can identify the exact cause and take care of it at the source.
Welcome to Autism Parenting Secrets. It's Len, and I'm here with my wife, Cass, and we're talking about something today that's going to seem like something that's too good to be true. Our guest is Dr. Luis Garcia. He's a leading contributor to the field of biomagnetism. And this is an approach that you've likely not heard of, but trust me, you'll want to hear this conversation. Some background on Dr. Garcia. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in biology from Boston College in 1997. He received his medical degree from Universidad de la Sabana in Bogota, Colombia in 2005. And until 2010, he was the medical director and chief science officer of Salud Futura Clinic in Bogota, Colombia. So it was there that he worked with neurofeedback, neural therapy, ozone therapy, homotoxicology, neurolinguistic programming, chelation therapy, DMSO therapy, and nutritional therapies, all those modalities along with traditional Western medicine. In 2008, he attended a seminar that totally changed everything for him, and I'll let Dr. Garcia share that story. But that inspired him to establish a practice here in the United States devoted to biomagnetism and addressing a myriad of health conditions, including those that your child may be experiencing right now, is what his practice is all about, to help people stabilize the body's pH and stimulate the immune system. The secret this week is biomagnetism is that powerful. Welcome, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you very much, Len and Cass. Glad to be here.
We're excited for this conversation. Raising really energetic kids. It's always fun when you come across something, at least it's new for us. I do have my magnets here. I'm so excited to learn from you today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And yes, this is something that from the moment I learned about it, it changed my life. Having been in conventional medicine, and my father was a conventional medical doctor. And so, he raised me taking antibiotics and taking shots and always looking to a pill for every ill. And so when I went to medical school, well, that was the typical training. However, upon finishing medical school and opening up my own medical practice, I soon realized that patients came to me and they were frustrated that nothing was working. And so that led me to explore other modalities. And I thought, wait a second, I just spent all these years in medical school and things aren't working. So there's got to be another approach. I have to think outside the box. And so I looked to holistic doctors that I had met along the way, and I asked them, hey, what are you doing? And so they said, ozone therapy and IV therapy and acupuncture and homeopathy. And so I started to take courses in that and incorporated that. And sure, patients were getting a little bit better, but they needed shots, injections, tablets, drops, and just it was all starting to be so complicated. They were inching forward, and I wanted to find something that would, launch them forward. And so I eventually found a medical doctor that put me on the path towards biomagnetism. And so he said to me, his words exactly were, it sounds like you need to discover biomagnetism because it changed my life forever. And the only other thing that has changed my life forever was when I had a son and when I learned biomagnetism. And so I think this can do the same for you. And so fast forward, 15 plus years later, my goodness, ever since I learned biomagnetism, my life has never been the same since. And so biomagnetism specifically involves the placement of magnets in pairs on the body in very precise locations so that it restores pH balance to those areas. Ultimately, if you take a magnet, and so here we can see two magnets, there's a black side and a red side. And so one side is a positive pole, another side is a negative pole, and ultimately opposites attract and like forces will repel. And so when you place those magnets on the body, the magnetic fields ultimately end up pushing hydrogen ions and hydroxy ions throughout the body. And so based on where you place the black side of the magnet, where you place the red side of the magnet, you will be moving and shifting the pH balance in those areas. So if you place two magnets in the vertical direction, say over the thyroid gland, you will be stimulating the thyroid function so that it helps restore function to the thyroid gland. You can do the same on the liver, you can do the same on the kidneys, and it will force it to kind of ramp up. Based on this, after having gone to that first seminar, learning these basic principles from Dr. Isaac Goyes, I thought, wait a second, that sounds miraculous, too good to be true. I really need to test this as soon as I go back to Colombia and work with my patients. And so Monday morning, I told my nurse, first patient comes into the office, I'm going to throw magnets on him and we'll see what happens. And so he had the worst case of pneumonia I've ever seen, and rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, feverish, fatigue. I mean, he was in such bad shape that I knew he was almost going into septic shock. And I was considering, get this man to the hospital. And so I told him, I said, listen, I just got back from a conference. I learned this technique, biomagnetism, and, do you mind if I try it on you? He said, go ahead. I feel horrible. And so I opened up my notebook with a bunch of scribbled down notes, and I just looked for everything that said, lungs, respiratory, fever, this, that. And so I just opened up my book and started placing a magnet goes here and up, says on the head over here and on the right lung over here, on the pleura over here, and just loaded him up with magnets. And half an hour later, his fever was gone. He stopped feeling exhausted. All of a sudden, he felt relaxed, and his cough slowly started to go away. And so he said, Doc, I feel so much better. And I said, you know what? I'm kind of shocked myself, but here's some antibiotic just in case, a prescription for it. Let me see you in about 3 days, but let's talk tomorrow and see how you feel. Don't take the antibiotics just yet because you're doing great. Let's see what happens. He called me the next day and he said, Doc, I feel amazing. I slept great. My lungs are clear. I'm no longer coughing. That worked magic. And so I said, all right, come in 3 days and let's see if it still lasts. He came back 3 days later and perfect physical checkup. I couldn't find anything wrong with him. And I said, did you take the antibiotics I read the script for? He said, no, I feel great. And I was left scratching my head. I'm like, wait a second. He was about to go into septic shock, and I was scared to send him to the hospital, yet I threw magnets on him and his body healed. The pH balance was restored to his lungs, to his immune system, to his basic organs that were able to kickstart his recovery. And so that set me on a path towards, I need to know more. I have to explore this more. And so just patient after patient, I started doing my own research. And so I was involved in research at Boston College. And I said, I need to prove this to myself. This one case may have been a fluke. Let me try it out. And so when I saw female patients that came in with urinary tract infections, I would say, you know what you have is a UTI. And so go to the lab, drop off a urine sample, come back, and I'll put magnets on you. And so when I was placing magnets, if I detected that E. coli was what was causing her urinary tract infection, well, there are placements for the magnets for E. coli. If I detected that it was Klebsiella or protease bacteria or you name it, bacterial infection that was causing the UTI, when 3 days later the urine culture would come back, sure enough, it was exactly what I had detected using biomagnetism. And not only was I spot on with that, but also their symptoms would disappear within either minutes or hours of receiving the treatment. And so they did not end up needing any antibiotic treatment. And so I was just equally blown away that I could identify the proper pathogen that was causing that underlying infection, and B, I could stabilize the pH balance in those areas where those pathogens were hiding so that they could no longer survive and continue to cause health issues. And so by knocking out the environment, controlling the environment, restoring balance, it allows for the immune system to do what it always does and heal our bodies.
I'm just wondering, because I'm like, first mind flow, right? And I love your example and I love how you got into this. And I love that you were doing testing along with it to kind of understand what were those pathogens, or what you sensing was going on. So you have that proof of principle too.
Yes.
And part of your assessment, is it things like muscle testing? Is it
Yes.
just kind of the symptomatic where they say, and you've seen enough patterns to kind of understand it? Muscle testing, something's been big for our family kind of understanding. So I was just trying to figure out, how do you assess?
Absolutely. So I do muscle testing. And so not everyone understands muscle testing until you have it done on yourself and it's, explained in person, or you experience it for yourself. And so ultimately, the body is an energy source. And so when you connect the body to positive energy, say, you eat an orange. Well, an orange, has good positive energy to it. You will become strengthened by the orange. And so when you muscle test and either lift your arm and then the practitioner tries to push down on the arm, you eat an orange or you eat, something that's healthy, you're going to be able to resist. Your body's going to be strong. But when, say, you happen to, I don't know, hold a mercury thermometer in your hand, and then you do this and you lift up your arm and you try to resist, immediately your entire body's going to feel weak because mercury is a known toxin. It's a heavy metal. It interferes in our body's energy. And so I know this concept may be difficult for people to understand or wrap their head around, but we are all energy fields that are walking around. And that's why sometimes when you meet a person and you stand, a few feet in front of them or close to them, then you walk away and you're like, that person gave me a weird vibe. I didn't like their energy. It's because we're all walking around with our own energy fields. And sometimes when our good energies intertwine, we get that good feeling. We feed off of each other. And in the opposite way, when we, meet certain people that we're just like, ugh, I don't know what it was, but I didn't get a good vibe. Well, they probably have very negative, toxic energy. And it's not necessarily them, it's just their body's very toxic. And so you actually can feel that somehow they drag your energy down. You kind of have to experience this in order to know what you're talking about.
Well, and I think this is huge for if you're a parent of a child, especially with a diagnosis like autism. Our kids, like I said to you before, like I'm raising the most energetic kids ever. Like they are so sensing. And so if you're able with placements of magnets to understand what's going on in, their body, but also to kind of help restore flow, might be like just from that energy perspective. That could be game changing, because we have some kids that aren't able to communicate. They don't really know, but they are super, super sensing. So I can see biomagnetism being huge for our listeners and for their children that, may not be able to communicate, but absolutely sense everything and understand everything.
Absolutely. And so, speaking of flow, Dr. Goyes discovered this back in 1988. And so, since then, he had been doing countless studies researching biomagnetism. And in one study he did maybe 10 years ago or so, could be 12, with Dr. Raymond Ilou in Spain. He actually did dark field microscopy. He took a patient's blood, examined it under the microscope before applying biomagnetism, and he noticed that the red blood cells were stuck together in the rouleau effect. And so they were just stacks of red blood cells, when the red blood cells should be flipping and sliding, kind of bouncing off one another. They shouldn't be, stacking up. And so they noticed that in the microscope with this particular patient. And then Dr. Goyes proceeded to apply magnets on that individual. And then about 20 minutes later, they took another drop of blood from that same patient, and they looked at it once again underneath the microscope. And what you observed was all of the red blood cells slipping and sliding past one another. They were no longer stacked at all. Blood flow had been restored to this individual patient's body. And so you can easily see that doing dark field microscopy on individuals. And so you do the dark field microscopy on an individual with whether Lyme disease or autism or a chronic health condition, and you're going to see a lot of stacked red blood cells, and that's called the rouleau effect. And so you do the same test on a high performance athlete, and I can guarantee that those red blood cells are going to be slipping and sliding past one another, because that athlete does lots of exercise, eats super healthy, and treats their body like a temple. You're not going to see an Olympian drink Coca-Cola or, eat ice cream and cheese and all these dairy products and toxic products, neither during training nor, before the events. And so they know the value of nutrition and healthy lifestyles. And so with the autistic community, unfortunately, the children have become toxic. And so it's not necessarily their fault. It's the environment's fault. It's society's fault. There are multiple things in our environment that intoxicate them. Everything from the mother, unfortunately, having a toxic body during pregnancy. And so if the mother loved to get her hair dyed and also used, shampoo with this and soap with this scent, and now everything has scents and everything has chemicals. And so the amount of chemicals that have been detected in mothers has just, skyrocketed over the years. It used to be, I think, less than 50 chemicals, and now it's over 150 chemicals are detected in pregnant women. And so unfortunately, the more you continue to introduce these toxins into the body, the mother will then pass those toxins on to her unborn child. And so, unfortunately, when women become pregnant and everyone says, "Oh, of course you're pregnant. Look at that healthy pregnancy glow." No, it's not the glow of pregnancy. It's the glow of your body is being detoxed by that unborn child. And so it's unfortunate, but all of us at all times should be detoxing our bodies because of the water we drink, because of the foods we eat, because of the air we breathe, because even though we may eat organic is only, pesticide free and, somewhat fertilizer, chemical free, but there are heavy metals in the earth. There's arsenic in the soil. And so apples absorb arsenic, grapes absorb arsenic, rice absorbs arsenic. So anyone that eats any of these, well, they're taking up some small amounts of arsenic that over the years, it all accumulates. And so by detoxing, taking antioxidants, doing saunas, exercise, anything that gets your body to sweat out and detox helps. And so unfortunately, women before they become pregnant should do a full round of detox for 6 months or a year to get their body in the best shape for pregnancy and avoid known toxins that contain mercury, that contain aluminum, and just avoid those things in the environment that will actually introduce more of a toxic load into their children.
Right. Yeah, no, it's not the mom's fault. It's just that, yes, there's a lot they could do with the right information, but then even if a mom takes those precautions, does that type of detox before she gets pregnant, the deck's stacked against everyone once the baby in this earth. And we've had so many episodes talking about the variety of toxins that are out there, and it can feel overwhelming. But the great thing is you can play better defense and significantly reduce exposure.
Absolutely.
But I have to say, your comment though about the pregnant woman and why like she's glowing, just to put a fine point on what you were saying, you're saying that the baby is actually absorbing those toxins.
Yes.
And so again, that's a hard thing to hear and to understand, which is why you can't ignore this, because it is so important and the environment's getting even more toxic. But can you take that energy, feeling with whatever that emotion is, and channel into, okay, well, what can I do now?
Well, two things, right? So for anyone who's listening, there's a great EWG study that was done, I want to say 2005 or 2008, that actually was cord blood with 238 chemicals were detected in the cord blood of a baby.
There you go.
Our babies aren't born clean. As a parent of a child who, my son diagnosed with autism, my daughter, we did life very differently. We lived in a green building, non-toxic materials, nothing with fragrance brought into my house, everything organic, non-processed. Her upbringing was much less toxic than what our son was exposed to.
Absolutely.
So a mother who had mercury poisoning, a mother who was in the fragrance industry, so my kids were like perfect storms, but you can make better choices as you move forward. So not to get stuck and beat yourself up, but just know that filtering your water, the products you buy, the food you buy, you've more sensitive beings, which is why making better choices with your dollar are going to really, really benefit, and probably why you need to pay more attention to the stuff that most of us ignore. Laundry detergent is a great thing to look at, right? So many people like freshness for 3 months. Who stinking cares, right? Because if you you just want to just let's just clean the clothes versus how long is the scent going to last on it for you? But yes, so we have now, yes, if I ever had a third child, my detox protocol would have been very, very different than I already had my kids. So I think it's for our listeners. Okay, now, yes, our kids are kind of perfect storms and we live in a toxic environment, but now it's to go do something like biomagnetism that helps the body that's already been burdened detox, and our kids' bodies who have already been burdened because of the downstream effects. That's pretty spectacular, because if you can energetically, and you can show, I love the idea of under the microscope before and after magnets in 20-minute time frame, if things can flow and our bodies are designed to be resilient and, healing machines, the body's designed to really regenerate. So let's talk a little bit more about, the red side, the black side, and how that kind of flows.
Yes. So about flow, there's a great YouTube video that's on our channel that talks about oral health and biomagnetism. And so one of my biomagnetism students is actually a dentist in Connecticut. And I challenged him and I said, listen, do an oral sample of someone's mouth, take saliva, look at it underneath the microscope, and then place the magnets on that individual and 20 minutes later, take another sample. And so in the YouTube video, you can see how before the magnets were placed, you observe thousands of spirochete bacteria and several parasites, several amoeba. After the magnets were placed, you no longer observe any parasites or any bacterial infections. The pH of the mouth, of the oral mucosa, was stabilized, and so all of those pathogens died. That is a perfect example of how the magnets restore pH balance and allow for the body to thrive and the pathogens to die off, because they no longer have those ideal environmental conditions to replicate. With regards to where you place the black, where you place the red, that all comes down to the muscle testing and the different protocols that you learn in our whether in-person course or the online course that we offer. But there are also very simple techniques that you can place that, like I mentioned earlier, when you place magnets vertically on your liver, you're activating your liver detox pathways. You place magnets on your lymphatic system, certain specific points, and you activate lymph detox. And so we've placed magnets experimentally on different clients and patients when I was in Colombia, and you observe the most miraculous changes. For example, when a patient came in and they had kidney stones, I said, go quickly around the corner, get an x-ray, and let's see, it sounds like you have a kidney stone. They brought it back, and sure enough, they had a kidney stone in the left ureter that drains urine from the kidney down to the bladder. I then placed magnets on the ureter to drain and change the local pH so that calcium stone creating the inflammation and pain could start to disintegrate. And within an hour, that pain disappeared, and they never observed the stone coming out. But when they did a follow-up x-ray 3 days later, there was nothing there.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And a number of stories I've heard you talk about and I've read about. That's why I said at the outset, this is kind of mind-boggling, hard to get your head around. And I know you were as skeptical as anyone, right, initially, which is the absolute way most people, approach this. But could I just give a summary of my understanding? Because I'm obsessed with root cause focus and for helping parents understand, well, why would you even consider a particular therapy or an intervention? So with biomagnetism, tell me if I have this right, and please clarify. The body's pH, right, is there's a range that it needs to be in, like 7.3.
Yes, correct.
7.6, right? There's this range.
If 7 to 7.3.
Okay, so if a part of the body or the body is out of that range, so either too alkaline or too acidic,
yes,
that's basically going to create the inflammation, the conditions where lousy stuff can happen, right? Because I think a lot of parents
correct,
get their head around the fact that chronic inflammation, not good inflammation, that just is perpetually there. So the root cause in my mind is that the body's out of balance from a pH perspective.
absolutely,
and
yes.
When the body's out of balance like that, that's when pathogens of a variety of forms, including viruses, can set up shop. And also the body can be out of balance emotionally. There could be emotions that you're holding that are keeping you stuck. And this gets very similar to homeopathy. So the root cause is there's this imbalance, particularly from a pH perspective, and that biomagnetism is a really incredible way that you could restore that balance in pH and therefore alleviate the symptoms or whatever that might be happening that you're wanting to change.
That is 100% correct. And the beautiful thing about biomagnetism is that through the muscle testing method that goes along with the biomagnetism, you can identify the exact areas of the body that need that correction. So it's not going to be the entire body. It's going to be very localized areas to achieve that specific balance. And so the stomach has a natural acidity so that it can break down the foods that we eat. However, if that particular acidity goes out of balance, certain bacteria, such as H. pylori, will grow there. And so when you use the magnets on the specific spots of the abdomen, it no longer allows for the H. pylori to survive.
Meridians also in play with this?
Meridians? No.
Okay.
There may be magnets placed on meridians, but not to balance the meridian, but to balance the pH imbalance that's there. What's beautiful about biomagnetism is that it goes to the source. By focusing on the main cause instead of the symptoms, you no longer have to focus on, oh, what can I take to lower the volume on this headache? What can I take to numb the pain? What can I take to relax the muscles? It more or less becomes, what is causing the pain in my muscles? Is it some underlying infection? Is it some underlying stress, emotional stress, that's then throwing off my immune system, that's putting my body into chaos? And so with biomagnetism, you can identify the exact cause and take care of it at the source.
Right. And so for parents who are listening, right, for themselves, whatever is happening with them, biomagnetism can offer a way of getting to the root of it, whatever, emotionally or physically. But especially, I know every parent listening is like, okay, how is this going to help my kid? So I guess the number one point is that biomagnetism is not an autism therapy. It's biomagnetism is a modality to get to the root cause of whatever that unique individual is experiencing. Because, you know, every child's different, every parent's different. So look at it from that standpoint. This is just a way of approaching health and helping the body to get unstuck, get more balanced. And for your child, you know, what are some things that you can do? You know, that's what this is, an approach that you can add to whatever other things you're doing. Now, I guess one key question I wanted to make sure I got your opinion on, Dr. Garcia, is what would you say, very generalizing, but for kids on the spectrum, do you find that they are, from a pH perspective, that they're more acidic, like that they're basically having a lower pH, or does it vary wildly? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, for the most part, they are very acidic. However, I would say that there are layers of imbalances. And so every individual is their own unique universe of issues. And as you've mentioned earlier, yes, it's about that individual child, but it's also about their environment, their home, their parents, their nutrition. And so biomagnetism allows you, gives you a way to analyze and identify, okay, I found, say, this underlying pathogen in their gastrointestinal tract. And through biomagnetism, you can understand and identify, is that pathogen from the food they're eating or from a family member? Did a family member give them that particular pathogen? So let's just talk about any respiratory infection. And so with biomagnetism, you address the lungs where there's inflammation and it's causing some asthmatic, symptoms, respiratory discomfort. So you place the magnets to restore pH balance to the lungs, but then you have to also understand through biomagnetism, will this clear and keep the lungs stable, or is there a risk of becoming reinfected from a parent, from a pet, or from a food source that this original pathogen that created the imbalance came from? So you can identify and understand, Mom, you should also place these magnets on yourself. Why? I also suffer from asthma. How did you know that? And so using biomagnetism, you can hone in or zero into these very precise details so that they can then clean up their environment and make certain subtle changes so that they can realize, wow, no wonder my child was continuously suffering from asthma because of, our pet, or because of these certain foods that they're eating. And so it serves as a very precise guide that allows for the therapist and the family to understand, okay, you have to clean up this during this session, and then the next session you see another layer underneath of other issues that are coming up because you've cleared one. And so you can see the next layer. And that's how they start to get better.
Does biomagnetism also work on things like allergies, like food allergies? Because I'm thinking, so, this is not all about us, but like our son went anaphylactic peanuts 10 days after his 12-month wellness checkup. And that's when he became allergic to everything and lost his words, right? And lost his eye contact and lost everything. And so the allergy piece of this journey has stuck with us, while so much, moderate to severe autism is now mild, like so much other things have reconnected, but the allergy piece is there as prevalent as it was before. And I'm thinking, as we're talking, biomagnetism could help create that balance that maybe could help him not be as allergic as
Absolutely.
Okay.
So to address that in two ways, often I have found that allergies are the result of inflammation, usually in the gut, as well as elsewhere in the body, where, say, if the individual has leaky gut, well, certain foods are going to stimulate more inflammation. And so identifying which foods is great. However, you haven't restored the gut balance. The gut hasn't healed itself. And so through biomagnetism, you restore the pH and the gut does it automatically. So oftentimes I don't need to recommend, hey, take this probiotic, take this prebiotic, do this liver flush, do this colon cleanse. No, restore the pH balance to the jejunum, the ileum, the large intestine, the stomach, etc., using the magnets, and let the body heal itself. And then lo and behold, wow, I can actually eat carrots for the first time in 30 years. I no longer have an allergy to avocado. And it's like, wait a second, I didn't take a supplement. I didn't do a colon cleanse. How is this possible? Once again, the body healed itself. You restored the pH balance, and the body in its infinite wisdom, it knew how to correct things. With regards to the allergies, say spring allergies or autumn allergies, another thing that occurs there is that there are molds and bacterial spores that are released when the pollen is released. And so those are naturally in our environment. So just by walking outside, you're going to be exposed to all of these different mold and bacterial spores that will get into our eyes, that we will inhale, that we will pick up on our hands as soon as we open the car door, when our car is covered in yellow or brown or green, based on the trees in the area. And then we, rub our face, touch our nose, and up those antigens and spores go, that will then create and exacerbate certain respiratory conditions. With biomagnetism, you can correctly identify which spores you're being exposed to. And fortunately, there are magnets that you place on the body to drain and flush out the nose, to clear out the eyes, to clear yourself of those different irritants that we are being exposed to. So in the springtime, I generally tend to place lots more magnets on my face because of inhaling and getting all those spores in the eyes. That tends to come back in the fall. It stays stable during the summer, but in the fall, as all the trees lose their leaves and all those leaves start to fall into the ground, they once again release those spores. So instead of reaching for an antihistamine and nasal sprays and doing all of these other things, yes, you could purchase over the counter, this and that. Why not just restore balance to your nose, to your eyes, two different areas of your body and let your body flush those spores out automatically. Help it do what it naturally does. But this time, because of where you live, you're in the woods or whatever, you have an excess amount of that in your body.
Well, that's what's so exciting about this, is that a root cause focus is so important. And this is something which, again, I don't think is on very, very few people's radar, to get to the root so you don't wind up having to do 10 things to address a condition, whether it's allergies or whatever your child's experiencing. And I know the symptoms in terms of somebody on the spectrum will vary wildly. So no, there's so much I wanted to cover in this discussion. We'll have to have you back, first of all. But I think to bring this back for parents, right? If the issue is this chronic inflammation, and if your child is like most, I think, where it's the issue is that they have a lower pH, that generally speaking, in their body, then there's a lot of things that you can do to help balance that pH. That's where other episodes that we've had come into play, right? In terms of eating fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables, having a clean diet, which is what Cass's specialty. Doing breathing exercises for yourself or your child will help to get your pH more balanced. Meditation, a key way of doing that. And moving, exercising, getting in nature, non-toxic nature, all those can really help. And then here, where biomagnetism is yet another way that you can then, in addition to those other things, bring your body, your child's body back into pH balance. And when that happens, so many things improve.
Absolutely. And once again, I'd love to experiment and do research. Can't tell you how many times someone has come in and they've complained about, oh, I have sinus issues, and especially, this sinus, and right here, it's painful. And so I say, okay, I'm going to place a magnet there and let's see what occurs. And so when you place a magnet over an area of inflammation, the magnetic energy moves, shifts hydrogen ions, and it will ultimately end up causing a muscular contraction in either the arms or the legs that you can observe when the individual is laying down on a table. And what occurs is you place one magnet there, you observe the muscular contraction, and then you identify where you place the opposite magnet. So oftentimes, say in the face, it could be on the opposite sinus cavity. And so then you observe the legs, and if you're correct in your placement, then the legs will shift back into normal alignment. And that lets you know, the body lets you know that you've just restored pH balance to the body.
And you don't need your chiropractor adjustment either, just because you're
the same applies to muscles, the same applies to sports and athletes, and you name it. And after you take the magnets off, if you've applied enough magnets on the proper positions, and you ask the individual, okay, take a deep breath and now touch your sinus, they say, wow, it's no longer painful. I can breathe through my nose again. What just happened? And so the magnets have stimulated the drainage of the inflammation that was there in a very directed way. There's no way that you can eat broccoli and it's going to go to this sinus and alkalinize the left sinus, or avocados, or you name it. When you eat the proper foods, it has an overall generalized alkalinizing effect. When you meditate, the same thing. However, using magnets, you go right to the source wherever you have that discomfort. And with TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, that unfortunately the autistic community often suffers from, as a parent, your child hits their head, you can learn to place magnets over those areas where they've just had trauma, and you can force the inflammation down through placing the pairs in the right areas, whether draining it through the kidneys or the bladder or the lymphatic system, based on how hard, how intense was that trauma to the head. And so it's amazing the results that you can achieve by learning to place the magnets on the corresponding areas to attain these very specific results. And it occurs again and again and again. It's
That,
not something that, oh, this must be wishful thinking. Maybe this is the placebo effect. No, it happens again and again. My daughter, who today is 13, the first time she had a traumatic brain injury from playing soccer, she fell on the floor and hit her head hard on the ground, came up, oh my God, I feel dizzy, my head hurts. And so I had to explore and understand, what do I do? And I, you know, calmly thought, let me place a magnet on the area where she bumped her head. And I checked her legs, and sure enough, one contracted. And I muscle tested around the body and figured out where I placed the second magnet. And I kept exploring. And within minutes, her headache was gone. She felt great. And lo and behold, bye-bye trauma and inflammation to her head.
that's incredible. I mean, the examples go on, right? And
On and on.
that's why at the outset I was talking about how biomagnetism is that powerful. Like that is, like from your standpoint, and I know we're out of time, but from your standpoint, there's really no such thing as non-responders, right? This works incredibly well, especially if you're working with somebody who knows where to place the magnets, right? There is training involved, there's knowledge. And so for parents who want to better understand this approach, perhaps to even become trained themselves,
Yes.
How can people find you? And again, we're going to have you on again because there's so much ground I wanted to cover, and I'd love to be able to have the opportunity to do that in a future episode. But where can people find you, Dr. Garcia?
Absolutely. So yes, thank you very much. So my website is drgarciabiomagnetism.com. And on that website, you can find all of my social media contacts for Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And so this is an absolutely amazing modality that changed my life forever and has unlimited possibilities for families, for couples, for children, you name it. And it's all so simple. It really goes back to the basics of our body has an innate capacity to heal when you give it the right tools. Yes, those tools absolutely should involve our nutrition, but there's only so far that can go. Yes, you can, eventually get over a cold, say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, once the immune system deals with it. Yet if you place the magnets in certain areas, it's going to speed up the drainage from the lungs. It's going to boost your immune system. And lo and behold, in less than 24 hours, you're feeling like a champ, like you can run a marathon. And so it's kind of like, wait a second, is this really happening? Yes, it is. And you can repeat it day after day with all different types of issues in all different modalities, with pediatric population, with the elderly, with pregnancy, with dogs, with cats, with horses, with plants. You can apply magnetic fields to plants. Any and every living being on this earth requires magnetic fields. Earth is a magnetic field. When you increase it in very specific ways, energy is restored, life is restored. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And I would love to come back on and share more.
Well, fantastic. And again, I really appreciate you shining a flashlight on this approach, which again, I think is very novel. And, again, this is not giving medical advice or anything of that nature. This is just educating people on this approach. And if this is speaking to you, you can go to Dr. Garcia's site to learn more. But I know my wife and I were very excited about the opportunities that this presents. And this falls into our sweet spot of something that is potentially game-changing, not difficult to do, not crazy expensive. And it just makes intuitive sense if you're able to step back and just say, okay, well, what is this whole thing about health and wellness, and what does the body need? So the idea that the body's out of balance because of our toxic environment is something I think everyone can get their head around. Then the question is, okay, well, what's the best approach for me or my child to do something about it? And this just, again, it checks all our boxes. So I'm super excited about it. The examples you shared, it's hard to get your head around. It's kind of like AI overall. Like AI is here and everyone's just scratching their heads like, oh my God, this can mean so many different things. And it's the same thing here, where this approach to wellness really does seem game-changing, groundbreaking, and it's not necessarily new, but it's not something that's widely understood.
Yes. And another great thing about it is that fortunately, you don't have to, say, receive an educational degree in order to do it. All you need is a little practice and understanding. And that's why I developed both the online course and in-person course to teach others how they can either heal themselves or heal their own families. It's always very gratifying to me hearing of all the success stories that my students have been having just by practicing it on themselves and their family. I don't expect for everyone to learn this, to go out and set up shop, but learn it for yourselves, learn it for your children, so that next time that they have diarrhea, next time they have a fever, you can say, you know what? Instead of, yes, I'm going to give them chicken noodle soup and they're going to stay home from school, and that's always, a great thing. And maybe I can give them a special bath or what have you. But let me apply these magnets and boost their immune system. Let me place a few key points and see what happens. And when all of a sudden the fever goes away and they bounce back and they're feeling great, it's like, wow, this does work. And once again, on my website, there are links on YouTube where you can see testimonials of other parents and individuals that have benefited greatly from biomagnetism, both with children on the spectrum as well as other health issues. So I really invite everyone to check out my YouTube channel and see all the wide range of issues that can be addressed. And yes, this is not, medical advice for everyone, but just be open to the possibility of learning something new and exploring it for yourself, like I did. I did the research, I did the medical school, I did all the other modalities, and of all of those, this is the one that just blew my mind year after year. Now it's been 15 years.
Yeah, no, it truly is amazing. And again, we'll include all the links in the show notes for people to find you, find the course. And again, I think we're excited to go down this road, and we'll love to have you back. We'll be able to share our progress as well as we dive in. Doesn't mean everyone listening has to, but again, we're going to want to share what this looks like. And again, it just seems like, from my standpoint, something that isn't difficult, has incredible upside. And again, it can help your child, yourself, your whole family. So no, we really appreciate what you and your staff are doing, and look forward to having you on down the road. And thanks so much for taking the time today, Dr. Garcia.
Thank you very much, Len. Glad to be here.